All right. Welcome to tea time, and we got some kids up here anxious to do a few things. We want to remind everybody before I forget. I want to remind everybody that this is the weekend we set our clocks. We fall back, so that's good news because we gain an hour and get a little extra sleep. Let's see. Adrian is going to start us off. Let's start with the song first, okay? And then later I'll have you come up and read the scripture. So Adrian has the podium. Get that down some.
So where do I say? Like on the...
Okay, go ahead and put your book up here. Say, I'll be singing that number.
So I'll be singing 313.
Say it louder.
The 313.
Say it loud enough that your mom can hear you at the back.
We're gonna sing 313.
That's good. That's good. And you can go ahead and say what the name of the song is if you'd like.
It's the Old Rugged Cross.
And are you going to sing more than one verse?
Yes.
I'll tell you how we do it in Churches of Christ. We sing 1, 2, and 4. For some reason, we never sing the third verse. But you're the song leader. You decide.
2.
We're going to sing verse 2? Just verse 2?
Not going to just.
Okay.
Just 1.
That's just verse 1?
Yeah, just.
Okay. And do you want me to help you with the hand motion? I'll guide you a little bit, then I'll let you go after you started, okay? And you can keep it going if you want.
I thought everyone will sing. I thought everyone will sing.
Everybody will sing,
Oh.
but when I say hand motion, put your hand out like that. Okay, you go ahead and start.
On a hill far away
Stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. Just close your finger and thumb together, and then that means we all be quiet. Okay? I want to have you do verse 4.
Okay.
And I'm going to start again with you, and then I'm going to let you go and see if you can keep that going like that. Did you feel that rhythm?
Yeah.
Okay, it has a little bit of a cadence to it. Here we go. Verse 4. To the old rugged cross I will never be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. And you'll call me someday to my home far away, where its glory forever will share. So I'll cherish the cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will sing to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Good job. All right. Rhett, I didn't catch you before. Do you want to read a verse? You want to lead a song? Come up here. We'll read a verse. I'll pick a short one for you, okay? As a matter of fact, I read a verse this morning I really liked. It came up on my U version, Proverbs 11:25. I thought this was a good one. Okay, we're going to look at this verse right there. And that word is, can you see that word? Can you see that word?
Wait.
Verse 25. This word is generous. Say generous.
Generous.
Very good. And this word is prosper. And this word is refreshes. And then we have it again where it's refreshed. Okay, let's see if we can do this. Tell them we're reading from Proverbs.
We're reading from Proverbs.
Sorry for the noise. That's way too much feedback on the mic. Go ahead. We're reading from Proverbs.
We're reading from Proverbs.
Chapter
11.
Verse
25.
Okay, go ahead.
A generous person will
Prosper. Whoever
refreshes others will be refreshed.
That's awesome. Good job. Good job. All right. You have a verse. Adrian's got another verse. And then we've got another couple songs singing.
2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so the man of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work.
Very good. Hold on. Stay up there for a second. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. This is not to embarrass you, okay?
Okay.
Did you understand everything you just read? What do you think rebuking means?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, one thing that I'm going to assign for you to do for homework is to be able to tell me next week, okay? If you're going to read it. You got it? So let me ask you this. This is an opinion question. That sounds like a rebuke. So do you think that it's important, Adrian, that if you're going to read something to the people that they know what it means?
Yes.
Do you think it's important that if you're going to read something that you know what it means before you read it?
Yes.
Now I'm just teaching you, okay? Because I figured that's a word we don't use a lot at your age. Okay?
Rebuke.
So, yeah, rebuke. So I want you to find out, have mom or dad help you out, okay? And let me know what it is.
Okay.
I'd like to know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. We had a song request, Old Rugged Cross. Oh, you did that one. Wait, what was the other song?
Rainbows.
Oh, the potato chip song. Okay. The potato chip song. Okay. All right, I'll stand up here with the kids. Come on, Rhett, we're going to do this song. You'll like this one. All the kids get up here. All right. This is a VBS song. Come on, kids. Come on up here.
You're just in front of me.
Come on up. Leave the mic alone. If you've never been to VBS, this is probably a new song for you. It's fun to do. It's kind of a partly make-believe song, but it's fun to think about what Jesus can do. Are you ready?
Yes.
I say, are you ready?
Yes!
Okay, here we go. Potato chip, crunchy, crunchy. I love Jesus, bunchy, bunchy. I once knew a man. He walked like this. Then he met Jesus. And he walked like this. Potato chip, crunchy, crunchy. I love Jesus, bunchy, bunchy. I once knew a girl. She sang like this. Then she met Jesus. And she sang like this. Potato chip, crunchy, crunchy. I love Jesus, bunchy, bunchy. I once knew an elephant. It went like this. Then he met Jesus. And he went like this. this? Potato chip, crunchy, crunchy. I love Jesus, a bunchy, bunchy. Okay, go ahead and get to the mic, and we're going to have Edmund lead us in a prayer. Then we'll go to class. Go ahead.
Dear God, thank you for letting your son die on the cross for us. Thank you for our family and our friends and all that you give us. Thank you for all the good that you do. Thank you. Thank you for bringing us love. In Jesus' name. In name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Very good. Awesome. Good job. Let's go to our class now. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Okay. All right. So what did we learn from that last song? Christianity ought to be fun. And you ought to be crunchy. Not crusty, crunchy, okay? A bunchy, that's right. James, the book of James says, if anybody is sick, let him pray. If anybody's happy, let him what? Sing a song, that's right. And that's just a fun thing to sing. May not be theologically altogether correct, but I think it's showing us something. Job chapters 4 and 5 are where we're going to be tonight in the book of Job, man under pressure. And tonight's last lesson is receiving bad advice. Okay? Eliphaz is going to speak now. We saw Job speak last week. Eliphaz is going to speak. And I have to tell you, if you've read these two chapters, I'm sitting there thinking, if I was in Job's position, listening to this guy, somewhere early on in this, I'm thinking in my head, when will this guy shut up? I don't know if you got that feeling or not. And I know that may not be the most pleasant thing to say those words, but I'm really thinking that sometimes we hear somebody yak, and we're just thinking, would you just be quiet? Some of the most damaging things you could do, among some of the most damaging things you could do when trying to help a person out, is to talk too much. As a matter of fact, sometimes talking is the last thing you need to do. You need to just have your presence there and be able to listen. We are not called to always, I know where the Bible tells us that we are to be ready and prepared to give an answer to everybody that's seeking to give a defense for our faith. But guess what? Not everybody's seeking. Not everybody's wanting you to talk. Sometimes it's just being there is the important thing. I was told early in life that I had the gift of gab. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. But I know that there are some people, there are two kinds of people. There are people that have something to say, and there are people that always have to say something. How many of you know the latter part, the latter group? They always have to say something. They always have to either one-up you or have the last word, or they feel like they're the expert in the room, right? And we get that all the time wherever we're at, and perhaps I'm that way myself sometimes. I feel like maybe I say too much, which is a constant struggle among most preachers. We do talk too much. I think that we're saying things that are unsolicited and also very ineffective and unhelpful, and but we sometimes feel like we have to say something. But sometimes when you don't know what to say, it's best to not say anything at all. Isn't that kind of an old adage? what Eliphaz is going to do is he's going to now say his words after hearing Job breaking the silence. They've been sitting around watching their friend who is in this, what they consider a pity party mode. And Job then has come into this lamenting monologue thing, I guess you could say, and now Eliphaz wants to reply to it. Let's break it down. Chapter 4 verse, first, the first 4 verses. Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied, "If someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? But who can keep from speaking? Think how you have instructed many, how you have strengthened feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled, and you have strengthened flattering knees." Let's just look at those first 4 verses just for a second. I think what Eliphaz is painting the portrait of is, hey, Job, a lot of people have gone to you when they have their troubles, and you have been able to be there helping them, that you didn't keep silent, but that you gave encouraging words, you gave instruction. Now, are you willing to listen to what we have to say to you? Okay? I think it's kind of, or will you be impatient with us? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to receive what you have so often done for others? Are you willing to be on the receiving end of this? And there's nothing necessarily wrong here at this point with what Eliphaz is saying. I know a lot of times we get into relationships and into settings where we build camaraderie with people. For example, I think of Kevin Kokenauer. Kevin likes to, he likes to sometimes, in a loving way, poke fun and gig a little bit, teasing either over sports or other things. For those of you that didn't get to see or meet Larry Larimore, he's one that Kevin would tangle with. It was in a brotherly relationship, right? And one thing I know Kevin has learned, because I'm one that we spar with a lot, that if you're going to dish it out, you're going to have to what? Isn't that right, Kevin? And they better be prepared. If you're going to dish it out to Kevin, he's sneaky about this, but he'll give it back to you. Okay, he's going to throw it back to you. It's just the way he is. Okay, am I right, Mom? Is that right? So I can't even think of the baseball team you like. But all I know is they're not in the World Series. Is it Royals? You're a Royals fan, yeah. Did they do very well? No, not this year. By the way, you're not going to find anybody that will beat Kevin on statistics for any baseball team or players, okay? He knows every baseball card there ever was. But how about them Texas Rangers? Yeah, okay. Anyway, just to use him as an example. So I think what Eliphaz is saying here is, this is going to hurt, but you need to listen to what we have to say to this now. So, verse 5. But now trouble comes to you, and you are discouraged. It strikes you, and you are dismayed. Should not your piety be your confidence, and your blameless ways your hope? Consider now who being innocent has ever perished. Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. At the breath of God they perish. At the blast of his anger they are no more. The lions may roar and growl, yet the teeth of the great lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. A word was secretly brought to me, my ears caught a whisper of it. Amid disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on people, fear and trembling seized me and made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. It stopped, but I could not tell what it was. A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can even a strong man be more pure than his Maker? If God places no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed more readily than a moth? Between dawn and dusk they are broken to pieces, unnoticed, but they perish forever. Are not the cords of their tent pulled up, so that they die without wisdom? All right, let's talk about this. Where do I start? Where would you want to start? What do you see in this thing that Eliphaz has to say now to Job? I mean, I have things to say. I have my notes, but I just kind of want to know, where are y'all at on this? Call us if you need us. Do you need anything? Can we get you a cup? Would you like to go out and eat steak after this or something? Rather than, act like you're the expert in this, right? Anybody else? Any one of the verses, any one of the things that he says make you want to comment or question something about anything? Okay, so is he drawing a conclusion? What's the conclusion he's drawing? Huh? Right, you're not righteous. That's the conclusion. It's obvious that that's what he's saying. Now, he doesn't call him out saying, you're a bad person, you're evil. He's trying to bait a hook to draw him out. Tell us what you did. He's trying to draw him out, right? And he's kind of doing it in a nonchalant way. Here I am talking to Adrian about understanding words you use, and I don't even know what that word means. But anyway, kind of under the radar, so to speak, or kind of, is there any reverse psychology here? There's a little bit. There's a little bit of this. Now, Job, before we talk about this, remember the many, many times that you've been in the position we are trying to console somebody else? Well, that's what this is. And I'm here to help you. I'm going to help you out. And will you be open to that? Are you going to be impatient to that? That's kind of those first 4 verses. Because here you are now, needing our help. Well, I think that is where I first see the problem with Eliphaz. I don't think it's in the first 4 verses. I think Eliphaz, when he gets to verse 5, is now saying, you need our help. We've got what you need to help you out. God's going to later say, y'all don't have what he needs. Okay? But for now, we've got what you need. You need to listen to us. Let's peel the Band-Aid off this wound, and let's take an honest look at yourself, and let's see what it is that you've got to come clean on. Now, in principle, some of those ideologies are not bad, but the way he's assuming is bad, because he is on false theology here. Bad things happen to bad people. Okay, that's true. But what's not said is the conclusion, bad things don't happen to good people. And that's not true. Would you agree? Because you're good people and y'all have had bad things. Am I right? You are good people. That tells us something about how we ought to think of ourselves. What are you snickering about? Okay. Well, I mean, I know that you're good people, even though bad things can happen. And the thing we need to learn then is, because something bad happens doesn't define you as bad. Now let me ask you this. You ever make a mistake? What was your mistake? I just want to know if I'm listed there. Okay. If you make a mistake, does that totally define you now as being bad? How many mistakes does it take for you to be defined as bad? Okay. You need to realize that mistakes you make, poor judgments, bad circumstances, and bad situations don't define you. I love the thermometer thermostat analogy. One's being controlled, one is in control, right? And we need to be the thermostat, being able to control and not let the climate or the environment or the conditions control us. Okay, we need to stay and remain in control. Case in point, David, adulterer, murderer, lying, not doing what he needed to do as king, but was he forgiven? Is he called a bad person? He's called a good person, isn't he? He's called a good person because when he's called out on it, it breaks his heart. He has a conscience intact. The bad people are the ones that don't care about the consequences, the ramifications, what it does to you or anybody else. It's only self-serving and no guilt is involved. That's where we get into trouble. Okay? That's where we can get into trouble. Anything else that's in his response from chapter 4 that you want to bring up? So he says, from my observation, right, which basically means my expert opinion is, and then he goes into this, and a lot of what he's talking about, it almost sounds proverbial, because you can, and you'll see this a lot from here on out, you'll see these guys who were talking to Job, when you're seeing divided up in verses the way they are in our Bible, it's like, well, here's a verse, but it's disjointed, it's disconnected from this verse, but it's like, here's a little proverb, here's a little proverb, here's a little proverb, here's a little proverb. And then you're making a point out of like a collection of sayings. Like if I was to talk about, if I were to talk about Ruth because she's left the room now, bad things happen to her during camping trips. It seems like she's always doing this, always doing that. Something's happening, right? Or maybe it's Larry that's bad luck. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I could just say, well, guys, if you step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back, and you walk under a ladder, or you break a glass or a mirror, and I could go through all those little fable things, and I could list 20 of them maybe and think, see, there you go. What have I really meaningfully given them? Nothing. Nothing. I've given them nothing. And it's almost like in this, and maybe this may not be a tactful way to say it, but I have a good friend. Y'all would know who it is. He's a preacher even. His favorite words are, well, suck it up. Suck it up. In other words, just go with it and go on. Don't get stuck there. I don't like using that term, but I don't know of another one to put in place of it other than just let it slide off like the proverbial duck's back and move on. There's another proverb for you. And so when he says, well, from what I've observed, it's almost like, well, I know best. Were your ears burning? Okay, that's all right. So he's saying, I know best. I know what you need to do. You ever had those friends that you've got this little issue, you've got this problem, you've got a challenge ahead of you, you've got a decision to make, and all sorts of people around you want to give you their advice. Well, if I were you, I would do this. If I were you, I would do that. As a matter of fact, that's in here. Where does he say, if I were you? It's in chapter 5, verse 8. But if I were you, now you know those people are quoting Bible. If I were you, I'd do it this way. Or, Lede, I don't do it that way. You want me to show you how I do it? I'm trying to put a combine back together or whatever. Like, I really know what I'm doing, right? Uh, yeah. So I just, or you would relate, because this relates to me and you, but it's just not, it's not farming for both. Maybe farming for you, maybe something else for me. But well, that's not the way Dad would do it, or that's not the way Dad did it. You relate to that, right? So we all have these influences. Well, if I were you, and I think his main premise is from verse 7. You need to listen to what I have to say because it's the right thing to say. So listen to me. And then he goes into this, verses 8 through 11. There's something there that's a little messed up. Now let me ask you, you know the principle of reaping and sowing. You probably have heard the expression of people that are maybe in their youth that have to sow their wild oats, Well, question, do you reap what you sow? Do you reap what you sow? I'm talking about not farming, but morals, okay? A man reaps what he sows. Doesn't the Bible say that? It does. If you sow sparingly, are you going to reap a bumper crop? No. If you sow sparingly, you're going to reap what? If you sow bountifully, you're going to reap bountifully. In theory. So, sowing and reaping, we get that principle. He's got that part of it right. If you do make bad decisions, if you use poor judgment, it can come back on you, can't it? Because that was a bad decision that trickled down a chain of events that caused an outcome that wasn't favorable. But here's the problem with that principle thinking. He's reversing it, making it be true on the other end or on the front end, just like it is from the front end to the back end. He's using the back end to justify the front end. Now, you may be thinking, what in the world are you talking about? If you reap what you sow, and and you're going to sow, and if what you're sowing is bad, you can reap bad. But if you're reaping something bad, then that means that you sowed something bad. That's where the fault is. Do you understand? Why is that true? You're shaking your head like, yeah, you agree with that. We all know that we can make bad decisions, sowing, and it can cause outcomes that are negative, reaping. Well, doesn't it just stand to reason then that if you have bad outcome, that meant that you sowed bad? Why does that not work that way? Okay? Yes, that is true. Or if it rained too hard and washed seed away, right? So see, I'm using what I think Eliphaz is thinking in terms of it's obvious to Eliphaz and these friends that Job has reaped something bad. Would you agree with that? He's got a bad thing. They're saying that means you sowed something bad. In the sowing, there's a problem. But you just made a point that not everybody that's got it good can credit themselves for having that. The other thing too is we're not necessarily talking about a farmer in the field here. This analogy is being used, I think, a little bit more broad than that. I think the analogy that Jesus or the Bible is speaking of when it comes to our morals and outcomes and circumstances in life really should be properly viewed as this. Yes, I need to sow good with good intentions, and that will better me to have better crops and better outcomes. That's true. But there are other people that I'm around, that I'm exposed to, that also are sowing, and sometimes their poor sowing turns into a negative crop or bad circumstance that affects me. Does that make sense? In other words, their bad decisions could affect an outcome with me. If I'm doing everything right and I got a good prayer life, I've got a good love life, I'm doing parenting right, I'm giving to the church, I'm worshiping, I'm reading the Bible every day, and I drive home and get hit by a drunk driver and it takes my life, is that my fault? You know? But that's a consequence that, do what? Should have made, well, yeah. That's a consequence that, a thing that was beyond my control, like you said a while ago. It's a thing beyond my control. And I can't control how you're making your decisions. And, I mean, that's just complicated when you're talking if there's just two people. But we're in this with a lot of people around us. And this, for example, our group, this church, could experience something bad at no fault to any of the people that are a part of this church due to someone outside the church's decision. Does that make sense? So Eliphaz's thinking is wrong there, but it was a common thought, even up to the time of Jesus. In Luke chapter 13, Jesus, and I've given this before, Jesus gives two situations. One is about the Galileans who were massacred and Pilate had mingled their blood with their sacrifices. And the other little story that's in that same chapter is the tower in Siloam that had fallen over and killed 18 people. Do you remember that? And Jesus dispels this thinking by asking a rhetorical question. Do you think these Galileans were worse sinners because that happened to them? Or do you think the people whose blood Pilate mingled with their sacrifices were worse sinners because that happened to them? And in both instances he says, no, it wasn't because of that. But what I tell you to do is repent. That's the point he's making, is that we change our life. So bad things happen to good people. And I think it goes back to the idea that the platform God used from day one, well, not day one, I would say day 3, when he gave us the 2 different trees, choice, and then later, of course, day 6, when man comes on the scene, that from days 3 and 6 onward, we are at the hands of all of each other's freedom of choices. Why do the good suffer? Free will. And that gets a little philosophical, and you can dive into that further if you wanted, but that's basically the fault. I think it's an Eliphaz's statement that, you know, when he says that, verse 8, go back to chapter 4, verse 8, as I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. In other words, if you are reaping trouble, it's because you sowed it. And that's a false conclusion. Would y'all agree with that? And then verses 17 through 21 of that chapter, can a mortal be more righteous than God? Oh, wait. Let's go back to this personal experience thing, verse 12. Not verse 12, sorry, verse 17. Hold on. Oh, no wonder I can't find it. I'm looking at chapter 3. Let me reset. Let me come back to chapter 4. Verse 12. Chapter 4, verse 12. This is where I really start thinking baloney. A word was secretly brought to me. Like I've got the inside information. You don't have it. Go ahead, Gil. Right, like I'm privileged to know this. And therefore, you got to listen to me. And secretly brought to me, like I was the only one God obviously thought was deserving to get this message. There's a little pride here, isn't there? My ears caught a whisper of it. Amid the disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on people, fear and trembling seized me and made all my bones shake. Is he being a little melodramatic? A spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. You know, it's kind of like, is this guy wanting to be Alfred Hitchcock or what? It stopped, verse 16. But could I tell what it was? A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. We call this, in the literary world, a hook. Actually, it's a form of entertainment. You're drawn in, and it gets suspenseful, and he's drawing you in. So the thing that he's about to tell you will seem very real, because he's painting a very vivid picture, isn't he? I don't think this happened at all. Do you, John? Do you think that he had a spirit like this that brushed across his face? Or do you think this is made up? I do. I think he's making it up. And now listen to what he says. When he hears that hushed voice, verse 17. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can even a strong man be more pure than his Maker? If God places no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed more readily than a moth? In other words, in a situation like you, Job. Now, do words from a friend like that help or hurt? Verse 20, between dawn and dusk they're broken to pieces. Are not the cords of their tent pulled up so that they die without wisdom? Whew, okay. Any other question or comment on chapter 4? Let's move to chapter 5. Which I think he now is back to reality, and he's told the story of what the Spirit has told him in the night, and now he's going to continue with his advice to Job. Call if you will, but who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn? You know, is it going to be Michael the archangel? Is it going to be Gabriel? Is it going to be, who is it going to be? Resentment kills a fool, and envy slays the simple. And I think it's almost like either calling Job a fool or implying that you'll be a fool if you don't listen. I myself have seen a fool taking root, but suddenly his house was cursed. His children are far from safety, crushed in court without a defender. The hungry consume his harvest, taken even from among thorns, and the thirsty pant after his wealth. For hardship does not spring from the soil, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. Yet man is born to trouble as surely as sparks fly upward. It's almost like really touching sensitive wounds on Job's life. Loss of crops, livestock, and children. All that have happened to Job. I'd like to share with you my expert advice. Be sensitive talking to hurt people. You can't help things you might be ignorant of, but you can help what you know to be true, and be sensitive to those things. It's not your job to peel off the Band-Aid. Say, take a look. No, it's your job to console and say, can I help you bandage that wound, or can I just be with you in this moment? Verse 8. But if I were you, I would appeal to God. I would lay my cause before him. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. He provides rains for the earth. He sends water on the countryside. The lowly he sets on high, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. I want to stop there. I think it's at this point that Job is probably thinking, will you just be quiet? You just mentioned you're implying that the loss of my family and my livestock and my belongings, because I'm so rich and everything, has to be because of some hideous thing that I'm holding resentment for and I won't let out. Won't you stop right there? Well, let me ask you guys something. What do you think at this moment where we just stopped, what do you think God is thinking? What do you think God is thinking of Eliphaz? Well, what's Eliphaz think of Eliphaz? What's Eliphaz think of Eliphaz? I think I know that I've got a handle on this. He's drawn conclusions, hasn't he? And he is passionate about it, isn't he? He even got poetic about it. That's how far his passion is. If he truly believed that this is Job's fault, and here's what Job needs to do, he could have said it in 6 words instead of going on this. Don't you think? He could have said 6 words. But the fact is, he is so in the dark himself about what's going on here. If Eliphaz ever, and I guess I'm assuming that he didn't ever find out, but let's just say that he did. If he ever found out what we know about the book of Job with what's happening in the background, with all that dialogue between God and Satan, how do you think that would make Eliphaz feel? Oh, I guess I missed that one, huh? Right? This is another lesson for us. Don't assume you know anything about how God works and how God thinks. What we can take for certain is what He's revealed to us in His Word, and beyond that, it's speculation. It's speculation. I think there's other reasons why we have verses like, don't add to any words of this prophecy and don't take away from it. I never thought that Revelation 22 argument had anything to do with instrumental music in the Lord's church. Never did I think that. But that's the way we've used it, you know. Am I condoning instruments in the Lord's church? No, I'm not saying that. But I think there's something else we've missed about it, and I don't think that's what the author had in mind. We're going to put this in here so they don't add instruments, you know. And by the way, when we take that verse for that, we misappropriate it because we say this book to imply it meant the 66 books, and it was the Revelation. Let's use it correctly. Now, the principle's there in some other books too. Paul talked about not going beyond what's written, you know. There's almost exact same wording in Deuteronomy in the Old Testament about the law. But what my point is we destroy the validity of God by trying to show others how expert we are on our knowledge of Him. And we become Pharisees, exactly right. We become, well, you have to see it through my lens, or you have to meet my approval with it. Because if you're not in alignment with me, then you're wrong, because I know I'm right. I mean, that's what a Pharisee would say, right? So that's just something I want to put out there, because I think you have to realize when you're picking up the Bible, you may be reading words that are from a guy like this, saying, well, it's in the Bible, that must be true. That's why context is important, so you know, well, this is Eliphaz, who later gets rebuked for saying what he says by God Himself. You know, it's not right. So he goes into this, well, if I were you, I would appeal to God. And here's where I think God would be thinking at this moment. You have no idea how righteous my servant Job is. You don't have any idea about the fact that I used Job as the case to prove my point with Satan, and I didn't use you, Eliphaz. It wasn't you I put up there, because you would have cratered. Right? That's what I think God's thinking. But it's what I think God is thinking. I'm not saying I know that's what God thinks. We don't presume that. But I can just picture this as God shaking His head Like, you have no idea, for example, what we all are privy to from the opening chapter, that Job was in the constant habit of praying for his kids just in case they might have sinned. And Eliphaz is assuming, well, obviously he's not doing that. And God is thinking, you don't know that. What's the lesson for us? When you think you've stereotyped somebody correctly, you need to remind yourself you have no idea what they've gone through. You have no idea their background, their history. You have no idea if they've talked to God or not. And you have no idea what God has in store for that guy. We don't. Therefore, don't presume that. Now, I think we have the obligation to see a person in need to say, I'm offering my help. What can I do? And I'm here for you. If you need me, I'll help you do something if I can. But I'm not going to presume to say I know the answers to fix all your problems. But Eliphaz thinks he has all the answers. And that's his biggest downfall. And look at the very last verse. I know we kind of skipped a lot of chapter 5 because he goes into this like proverb after proverb after proverb. Well, let's just look at a few of them. Verse 14, for example. Darkness comes upon them in the daytime. At noon they grope in the night. He saves the needy from the sword in their mouth. He saves them from clutches of the powerful. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts its mouth. There's 3 verses that are totally disconnected. But it's just like stockpiling all these little morsels of truth. And I don't, maybe there's nothing wrong theologically with darkness comes upon them in the daytime. I know people who in the broad daylight are in the dark. Okay? At noon they grope as in the night. When there is light, high noon, yet they don't have a... Yeah, I agree with that. But what he's trying to use that for, appropriate that for, and you get down to the very last verse. We have examined this, and it is true. So hear it and apply it to yourself. What is that, Karen? That's like, take this pill because we know it will do you good. Well, this is the answer. What we've just said, that's the answer. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think it's, and this could happen in any religious movement, I guess, but I kind of see it where it's in the charismatic movement, more evidence to me, it seems like. There's probably ways you can appropriate this and indict the Lord's church too, but in the charismatic movement, well, they believe in faith healing, and you ought to be able to speak in tongues if you're spiritual. That's kind of the philosophy, right? So if your loved one's not healed, or if you can't get to where you can speak in tongues yet, what's the conclusion? You don't have enough faith. You've not grown enough yet spiritually. So you're deficient on something. We don't need the Lord's people telling other people in the Lord's church you're deficient on something. We ought to all be able to admit we're all deficient on something, right? We're all that way. We're all sinners and fall short of the glory of God. So we have no right to say, well, it must be this or it must be that. Now, I'm not ruling out wise counsel for helping or coaching somebody to get out of a bad cycle of things, whether you're talking about habit-forming lifestyle, that behavior that is destructive. Are we to help mitigate that and intervene? Yeah. Paul says in Galatians 6, if any of you are caught up in sin, those who are spiritual need to go after them, right? Why spiritual? Because if you're not spiritual enough, you too can be influenced and get in that same sin. That's his point in Galatians 6. So we do have that task. We do have the charge to reprove and rebuke. Rebuke. Good luck with you explaining that to Adrian this week, if he can even remember this. But I wasn't trying to embarrass him. I was thinking, well, this is a point that's made for everybody. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anybody else have anything before we end on that? Job's going to talk again in Job 6 and 7, chapter 6 and 7. And then we have another friend, Bildad. Takes chapter 8. And so let's do it this way. Let's look at chapters 9 and 10 on what Job says and include chapter 11. I'm sorry, let me get back. Let's take chapters 6 and 7 and chapter 8 to see what Bildad has to say in response to what Job says again. So we'll get a look at another one of those friends, an expert. Okay, we'll go ahead and sign off there. Again, don't forget the time change. Are we signed off? Landon.